All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about a tool for your relationship that is incredibly practical. We're going to move away from abstract theory and get our hands on something you can actually use to cut through all the noise and focus on what really truly matters. Let's dive in. So, let me just ask you this and be honest with yourself. Is your relationship running on the right data, or is it being fed a constant stream of information that has absolutely nothing to do with the person you love? This is the core question we are tackling today because, honestly, the answer can be the difference between real connection and just constant conflict. You know, most of us are trying to navigate our relationships through this thick fog of competing information. On one side, you've got the signal, the real, actual, tangible stuff happening right in front of you. But on the other side, you've got all this noise, social media, old baggage, what everyone else thinks, all this stuff that contaminates your model of the relationship. The real problem is our brains often treat all of it as equally important, and that leads to massive prediction errors and, let's face it, a lot of unnecessary pain. So, what do? How do we fix this? Well, we need a filter. We need a tool that can help us sort out what's real from what's just interference. And that's exactly what this is. We're going to call it the Markov Blanket. Okay, the power of the Markov blanket is in how simple and elegant it is. Just think of it like a mental boundary, a velvet rope that you draw around your relationship. Everything inside that rope is signal. That's the data your relationship should be running on. Everything outside, that's just noise. You can see it, you can acknowledge it, but you do not let it inside to mess with your system. Let's get really specific about what gets a VIP pass inside this blanket. We are talking about the raw data, your partner's actual words, not what you think they meant. Their bids for connection, that little touch on your arm, the text checking in on you. Their patterns of behavior over a long period of time, not just one weird incident. And this one is so important, your own needs that you have actually expressed. These are the only legitimate inputs. And now for what needs to stay outside that velvet rope. That little voice of an ex that pops into your head? Nope. The model of your parents' marriage, good or bad? That's their map, not yours. The picture-perfect couples all over social media, cultural timelines telling you when you should be getting married or having kids, all of it is noise. It's just external data trying to crash the party. Okay, so the first practical step is to map out your own system. And it's not just about spotting the obvious noise. The real work is in finding the sneaky little leaks, the secret tunnels where noise gets in, pretending to be a real signal. This right here is the million-dollar question you have to ask yourself in those moments of anxiety or conflict. When you feel that tightness in your chest, is that feeling a prediction based on data from your current partner? Or is it a ghost from a past relationship running on old, outdated software? The feeling is 100% real, but where it's coming from, well, that changes everything. Let's look at the usual suspects, the most common leaks. First up, old attachment predictions. This is when you're basically reacting to a past partner who isn't even in the room. Then there's mind reading, acting on a whole story you've made up in your head about what they're thinking with zero evidence. And finally, unchecked interpretations. When you immediately assign the worst possible meaning to something they did without ever asking? All of these are old predictions masquerading as current facts. So once you spot the leaks, the next job is to recalibrate your whole system. And this isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. The practice is actually tailored to your specific attachment wiring, your default programming for how you relate to people. And that's what makes it so incredibly effective. Let's break this down real quick. If you lean anxious, your threat detection system is, let's say, a little too sensitive. The practice for you is to just pause, take a breath, and look for actual evidence before you react. If you're more avoidant, your connection radar is probably turned down a bit low. Your job is to consciously notice every little bid for connection and respond. And for a disorganized style where you kind of have contradictory programs running at the same time, the work often involves a therapist to help you build a safer internal space. See? Each practice means doing the exact opposite of what your gut instinct is screaming at you to do. Now, I know that might sound like a lot of work, but there is a brilliantly simple, super powerful tool you can use every single day to manage your blanket in real time. In fact, there is one little tool that is a total game changer for reclassifying data the moment it pops into your head. And here it is, 5 simple words. Other side of the blanket. Now, this isn't an argument with yourself. You're not trying to suppress a thought. It's a command. It's an instruction you give to your own brain. So why on earth does this work so well? Well, because it lets you recognize the thought without having to integrate it. You're literally telling your brain, hey, see that feeling? that unsolicited opinion from your friend, that perfect-looking Instagram post, that doesn't belong here. Move it from the actionable data folder to the external noise folder. You correctly label where the feeling is coming from, and poof, it loses its power to mess up your system. Now, it is really important to remember this is an ongoing practice, not some kind of magic cure. But the most powerful version of this practice is the one you don't do alone. It's about building a shared map together with your partner. And that brings us to the final and maybe most important step. We're moving from single-player mode to a two-player co-op mission. This is about building a shared model of your relationship together. Here's how you do it. First, you each go off on your own, draw a circle, and map out what you personally consider signal and what you consider noise. Then you come back together and you compare your maps. And trust me, there are almost always differences. The conversation you have next isn't about who's right or wrong. Not at all. It's about getting aligned on what data your relationship as a team is going to run on. You are co-authoring a shared reality. And really, that's what this all comes down to. It leaves us with one last big question. What kind of secure, connected, and truly amazing world could you and your partner build if you both actually agreed on the map? If you both knew with total certainty what was real signal and what was just noise? Think about that. Thanks for tuning in.